There's no national treasure, none that is grander than the Grand Canyon. And so today I'm proud to use my authority under the Antiquities Act to protect almost 1 million acres of public land around Grand Canyon National Park as a new national monument. To help right the wrongs of the past and conserve this land of ancestral footprints for all future generations. From time immemorial, more than a dozen tribal nations have lived, gathered, prayed on these lands.
Hello, my name is Desert Rat Explorations. I have brought you to the head of Soap Creek Rapid here in the very beginning of the Grand Canyon, which is called Marble Canyon. Now, to the right of us is the Navajo Reservation, a vast expanse of land that is managed by the Navajo people and is the biggest reservation in the United States of America. The Grand Canyon down below is operated by the National Park Service and designated a national park. Seems very simple enough. Where we are standing at right now is a place called the Arizona Strip. The Strip is a section of northern Arizona that is cut off by the Colorado River. And due to this fact, it has been one of the most isolated places in Arizona and the southwestern United States. Here, things have changed a little bit. The land hasn't pretty much changed. It's still beautiful as always, but the management has changed. So let me explain a little bit. The Arizona Strip was operated by the Bureau of Land Management, which is a bigger expanse pretty much of public land, not national park, not national monument, but just kind of public land, okay? Some people may be versed on it, as some people may not know. But what has happened is that last year, the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, has designated the Arizona Strip, majority of it, as a national monument. And this is big news. Things have changed around here. You have people here that live here, own land, and sometimes have a livelihood. May it be cattle ranching, may it be indigenous peoples grazing off the land, looking for herbs for their medicine men, things of that sort. And also, 60, 70 years ago, uranium prospecting. Now, to understand what I'm talking about, we must go in depth. And I have to go through the history of the Strip and what it is today and what's changed about it. Now, please watch this video because I think you're going to enjoy it. But for now, enjoy the video. For thousands of years, ancient man has called the Grand Canyon and its surrounding lands home. The footprints of the ancestral past are visible if one just looks beyond the rim. The Paleo Indians were some of the first human beings to venture to what is known today as the Grand Canyon, some 12,000 years ago. A hunter-gatherer society that migrated from place to place to season. They are known as the Clovis people. Evidence of their existence here comes from the discovery of stone tools near the Desert View section of the park. Later, between 9,000 and 3,000 years ago, projectile points and knives became common, as did thermal ovens and skilled weaving of yucca cactus sandals. The discovery of willow split twig figurines in caves deep inside the marble gorge of the Grand Canyon shows that these people were highly skilled in their craft. The figurines were found with remnants of small mammal bones, indicating that these people survived on small game and wild plants. This documented evidence suggests that many tribes such as the Havasupai, Hualapai, Hopi, and many others have strong spiritual roots in the region for thousands of years. The United States has had a long and complex relationship with Native American tribes, marked by hardship and conflict. From the forced migration of natives under the Indian Removal Act of 1830 to the dispossession associated with the creation of new national parks in the early 1900s, the pattern has been one of denying Native Americans access to their ancestral lands and uprooting them to government-approved reservations. The Havasupai have roamed the rim and wandered the depths of the Grand Canyon for generations. In 1880, the Havasupai were forced into a remote side canyon within the inner gorge of the Grand Canyon. While the native inhabitants were pushed out of sight, the Santa Fe Railroad was completed in 1882 and passed through Flagstaff, Arizona. Stagecoaches soon began bringing tourists to the rim of the Great Gorge. By 1901, a spur line between Williams, Arizona and the Grand Canyon was established, and thousands of people each year began flocking to the Havasupai's original homelands on the south rim to catch a glimpse of the view. When the Grand Canyon National Park was established in 1919, the tribe became completely surrounded on all sides. Although an amendment to the Organic Act allowed the tribe to utilize the new national park lands for their traditional purposes, park officials significantly restricted the tribe's movement in their land usage. By the end of World War II, the United States had been propelled into the nuclear age. The fear of communism's growth was rampant, and before long, the federal government inadvertently initiated a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union. This arms race would leave a scar on the land that still affects the communities surrounding the Grand Canyon today. The post-World War II era saw the creation of the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC, a government agency responsible for developing, regulating, and controlling atomic nuclear energy. With the production of nuclear weapons, uranium became a key component, as it can undergo nuclear fission, a process that releases large amounts of energy at the molecular level. By law, the AEC was the only legal buyer of uranium in the United States and controlled its market value. By the end of the 1940s, the Atomic Energy Commission needed uranium to create its nuclear weapons, and overnight, the price of uranium skyrocketed. This incentivized the public to scour the desert southwest in search for the rare metal. Established mining companies, along with mom-and-pop operations, sprouted up, and soon the Navajo Reservation, the Arizona Strip, House Rock Valley, and of course the Grand Canyon were all prospected for uranium. National parks were not exempt from mining developments during the Cold War. National security trumped even the most protected areas of this country. 2 miles northwest of the Grand Canyon Village sits the long-abandoned Orphan Uranium Mine, originally a copper mine situated 1,000 feet below the rim of the Grand Canyon. The Orphan Mine was known to have radioactive minerals embedded within the copper deposits. By 1951, geologists had discovered high-grade uranium ore within the mine. In 1956, a private company bought the claim and began developing it. For 13 years, the mine was in operation, and the tailings, or mine wastes, were stored on site in the upper and lower areas of the mine. The valuable uranium ore was transported through the national park to the Navajo Reservation, where it was milled in Tuba City, Arizona. Now a federal cleanup site, the Orphan Mine left taxpayers with an estimated bill of $15 million. The site has been fenced off by the National Park Service to prevent any unsuspecting tourists from contamination, as there are still radioactive isotopes in the soil. The Arizona Strip, situated north of the Grand Canyon, holds some of the richest deposits of uranium in the continental United States. In 1945, uranium was discovered on the Strip, and by the 1950s, Over 2.7 million pounds had been extracted specifically for the United States nuclear weapons program. By the mid-1980s, 3 small mines on the Strip produced approximately 10 million pounds of uranium for nuclear weapons and fuel for nuclear power plants. The Strip was a massive producer of uranium for this country. Until the price per pound dropped in the late 1980s, multiple mining companies sought to develop the Strip further by adding paved roads to their mining sites. However, the Arizona Game and Fish Department opposed the upgrades, concerned about the impacts on wildlife. In 2012, the Obama administration, encouraged by Native American tribes, recreationalists, and conservation groups, successfully initiated a temporary mining ban moratorium on lands surrounding the Grand Canyon. This protected about 1 million acres of land surrounding the canyon from new mining claims until 2032. The moratorium received harsh criticism from mining interests, who then sued the federal government for loss of future revenue and damages.
USGS, Science for a Changing World.
In 2021, the United States Geological Survey submitted a report showcasing 573 water samples from 180 springs in and around the Grand Canyon National Park. The scientific evidence showed that 95% of the samples from 206 locations over 40 years had uranium concentrations less than the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's maximum contaminated level of drinking water. However, the evidence did show that the highest concentration levels of uranium were found in Horn Creek, just below the old Orphan uranium mine on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Overall, the potential environmental effects caused by uranium mining in or around the Grand Canyon may take decades to reach groundwater discharge locations within the canyon itself. This vital report provides a baseline on spring and well health that will be greatly beneficial in the future. Now regarding monuments and ranching. Cattle ranchers have historically feuded with the federal government for a multitude of reasons. Ranchers often rely on public lands managed by federal agencies for grazing their cattle, and conflicts usually arise due to what they perceive as overregulation. Ranchers want to maximize their access to the lands, while the federal government aims to balance grazing with conservation. The history of ranching in the western United States has shown significant environmental impacts when massive herds of cattle grazed freely and continuously. The Arizona Strip, now part of the ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument, was once grasslands as far as the eye could see. Local Mormon ranchers, along with California cattle barons, fought and grazed thousands of cattle along the Strip in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, causing the grasslands and natural springs to become depleted. After years of neglect, the government imposed federal regulations that conflicted with ranching interests. For example, in November of 2000, President Bill Clinton created the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument, established to protect cultural resources but perceived by ranchers as a federal land grab that threatened their private lands and their livelihood. Contrary to this belief, Vermilion Cliffs National Monument was structured to allow grazing through a permit system. The ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument has been structured to allow grazing with this same permit system. Fast forward to August 8, 2023, when President Joe Biden at the historic Red Butte Airport signed a decree creating the new ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument. This 3-section monument encompasses 917,000 acres of already public land, transforming it into a new national monument. For decades, 11 tribes from the Grand Canyon region advocated for their people's ancestral lands on the rim to be protected. The area was formerly controlled by the Bureau of Land Management, a government agency with a multi-use land management approach that involves balancing conservation, recreation, grazing, and resource development. Unlike the National Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management's goals are different, with conservation not being their primary motive. When areas become monuments, several things change. Monuments in the United States can be managed by various government agencies such as the National Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management, the United States Forest Service, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument is unique because it will be co-managed by the Interior Department's Bureau of Land Management and the Department of Agriculture's U.S. Forest Service. Additionally, the 13-tribe coalition that advocated for the monument's creation will be directly involved in providing guidance and recommendations for its management. Each tribe will elect one member to the committee that will assist with the monument's management. In other words, the new monument will be overseen and co-managed by Native American tribes. This approach is similar to the management of Bears Ears National Monument, where surrounding Native American tribes have significant input on the management of their ancestral lands. With the establishment of monuments, arguments often arise regarding federal intervention in state and local control. Some argue that creating national monuments infringes on local oversight and land use decisions, particularly in areas where tension already exists between the federal and local authorities. When President Biden officially designated the ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon, it sparked major backlash from Arizona's Mohave County. Leaders from the Republican majority in both the House and the Senate held an emergency special meeting in Kingman, Arizona, just one day before Biden's four-state tour, to hear testimony from local officials and community members expressing their concerns. They claimed that the monument was merely a land grab and condemned it as federal encroachment.
This process and this push for this monument, for those of you that have been around for a while, has been going on for decades. Raul Grijalva has been pushing former administrations for many, many years to permanently designate these lands as a national monument. They're also claiming cultural sites. 445,000 acres of this proposed 1.1 million acres is within Mohave County. It's largely rangelands for those that have been in that area. And we would take exception to the claim that 445,000 acres is all one big cultural site.
Before long, Arizona's Mohave County filed a lawsuit, and shortly thereafter, the local townships of Fredonia and Colorado City, Arizona also sued. The lawsuit alleges that Mohave County and Colorado City will experience a decline in tax revenue due to the decreased mining activity. Furthermore, it claims that the land use limitations associated with monument designation will diminish the value of neighboring lands, including state trust land, which generates income that supports Mohave County's public schools. Supporting their local governments, Arizona's Senate President Warren Peterson and House Speaker Ben Toma argue that President Biden's decision to designate the new monument under the 1906 Antiquities Act did not solely aim to preserve objects of historical significance. They contended that the designation did not adhere to the requirements of conserving the smallest area compatible with the proper care and management of the objects to be protected. As Arizona legislators, Mohave County, and local towns have filed suit, only time will tell of the outcome. As the lands surrounding the Grand Canyon have been given monument status, the area is now protected from new mining claims. However, companies with existing rights can continue their mining operations within the new monument. One such company is Energy Fuels Resources, a U.S. subsidiary of a Canadian uranium company, which has begun ramping up operations near the Grand Canyon's south rim. The Pinyon Plain Mine, situated 10 miles from the rim of the Grand Canyon, has had existing rights grandfathered in and was permitted in 1984. For years, operations at Pinyon Plain lay dormant until recently when the price of uranium reached a desirable rate. Energy Fuels Resources claims to be using state-of-the-art environmental controls and groundwater protections to ease tensions with their opposition. Curtis Morris, Senior VP of Marketing for Energy Fuels, stated that the company is under the watchful eye of state and federal regulators and claimed that there is low impact with zero risk to groundwater from the mine. The Grand Canyon Trust, along with the Havasupai tribe, are the company's biggest critics and have fought passionately to prevent the mine from commencing. Their concern is the mine's proximity to the Grand Canyon and its effects on underground aquifers. As groundwater is the main source of the Havasupai tribe's drinking water, fears of contamination is the major concern for the tribe. Unfortunately for them, the Pinyon Plain Mine is now extracting uranium ore and shipping it to its White Mesa mill in Utah for enrichment. The ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument has become a reality, praised by Native American tribes and vilified by mining interests and local ranchers. With so much controversy surrounding this new designation, time is the key element. With pending lawsuits and the upcoming federal election, one can assume local, state, tribal, and federal governments will continue to battle over how these lands surrounding the Grand Canyon will be administered. As we have seen in the past with Bears Ears and the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, monuments can be downsized as quickly as they are created. Recently, on May 13, 2024, President Joe Biden signed a bipartisan ban on Russian uranium imports into law. Following this decision, Congress approved $2.7 billion to boost domestic uranium production. This sends a clear message to the uranium mining industry to prepare to ramp up production as the United States seeks independence from foreign sources, whether it be on the rim of the Grand Canyon or elsewhere. The second coming of mass uranium mining on the Colorado Plateau region may be upon us. Biden's clean energy objectives and the United Nations Climate Conference, with its multi-country declaration to triple nuclear energy's capacity globally by 2050, provided the incentive.